Hey guys, welcome to the Hanger Management Podcast. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jac, and we're psyched you're here because we are talking about strength training and injuries. Yes.
Yay.
I'm so excited. Okay, as per usual, before we dive into the episode, a couple housekeeping things. Number one, this ain't a kid-friendly show. We swear a lot. Number two, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hanger Management Pod and our personal IGs, which are below. And thirdly and lastly, we are operating remotely. Huge shout out to Opulence Media Group for getting us set up. Thank you so much, guys. Now, let's get into this. I'm so excited to talk about this. And once again, we have no sort of game plan for this, which
What I love about this episode is I'm injured.
Last week, Jackie's hormones were fucked, and that was what we talked about last week.
Life is aligning.
This week,
like Danielle. Literally, like we were gonna talk about injuries and just like strength training and just whatever. And yesterday, I fucked up my neck.
How did you mess up your neck? What did you do?
I'm honestly still trying to figure out. There was not like a moment that I fucked it up, but
I think that's
like
happens for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think like I was snatching a 30-pound kettlebell, and I've just like
no big deal.
Like I was like, oh, let's see if I can do this, and I did like friggin' way too many, obviously, and like it was fine at the time, but my neck must, I don't know, it was too much because I was dropping it like from the top, so it was stupid. It was dumb.
From the top, make it drop.
That's some snatch. Wow, that word kind of works.
So okay, yeah. So you hurt yourself. I think like honestly, that's I mean, as a coach, that's what I hear a lot is like, hey, I injured myself. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And there's really those two. I mean, we're gonna talk about injuries in a second, right? But let's talk first about
how it happens.
Strength training, right? Because we're always talking about strength training and why or how it's kind of the best what am I trying to say? The best form of exercise or training to elicit body composition changes, right?
Yeah.
And not cardio.
Not cardio.
So what is strength training?
To our episode on cardio.
Yeah. Star C episode on cardio. Yeah. So what's strength training? Like, what do you, I mean, you're newer to it than I am, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I would say, because like I never really liked working out my life, like until I forget when I started going to the gym with my dad, and he did like a bodybuilding type of split. It was different than what I'm doing now, but he kind of showed me, lifting weights, and it was a goal to like get heavier as you progress. So, strength training, resistance training, lifting weights, building muscle.
I think you're glossing over a big thing that maybe a lot of people might not know is that strength training is resistance training, is bodybuilding, is like those are kind of all the same thing, right? Like I mean,
there's just different ways to do it.
Yeah, a lot, and actually tons of different ways. And I mean, that's why we have jobs as coaches, is that there are many different approaches to strength training. And like Danielle said, splits are, different muscle group splits for strength training. But strength or resistance training, I mean, I probably should have looked this up before, but
to get the actual
definition. Yeah, I mean, to resistance training is essentially a form of training that creates resistance for your muscles.
Yeah.
And it results in improved strength, increase in muscle mass, improved muscular endurance. There's tons
bone
of
density.
Bone density, which is awesome for women, for all people as we age, but especially for women. So how that resistance is created is through a variety of means, right? So resistance bands is an easy one because it's called resistance, but also just through dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells.
As I rub my fucking neck. It's so bad. I need to take some medication. I've never I don't typically get injured, honestly, but I don't typically friggin' sling that heavy ass thing around. So
Slinging kettlebells around. Okay, we are going to talk about this
yeah.
because yeah, injuries are very common. So
Mm-hmm.
so when you so for resistance training, I think it's very common. I guess to start with, well, before the pandemic, people were in gyms using dumbbells, barbells, cables. Those are like a traditional kind of way to look at strength training and resistance training. Since COVID and the pandemic, we've had to drastically change, our approach to how we train, and we've incorporated a lot more resistance bands, lighter weights, and even body weight, because you can do some resistance training with body weight. It's not as effective, or I guess not as effective. I'll just stick with that. But yeah, there's definitely a way to use your own body weight for resistance training, so or strength training. So that's the gist of strength training and resistance training. Like we just said, tons of benefits, and in our opinion, and I think I'm okay to go out on a limb and say, backed by science as the best. I'm not going out on a limb. Fuck it. What am I saying?
It is what it is.
It's the best. What am I doing? Who am I? It's the best way to elicit body composition changes. And when I say body composition changes, I mean fat loss and improved muscle, increased muscle mass. So, yeah, that's the gist of resistance training. Now, progressions. I guess this is like one of the biggest things we see as coaches, I guess. I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So like, well, yeah. So the word like progression or regression, like that was all, I didn't know what that was when I started training, way back. I had no idea that there was almost like a tiered system of how to start with an exercise and progress it to, at most the highest version of it. And I think a lot of people aren't even aware of that, to be honest, that there are progressions and regressions to certain
100%.
things, like I remember you making a post, way back about deadlifts, and like deadlifts, you don't just start with a deadlift, like you have to start with a hip lift, right? And it looks so different because a hip lift is you're lying on the ground and you're thrusting up, and a deadlift is you're standing and like, straight leg deadlifting it down. So, a lot, and I thought that was, and so that's right. What's behind it is it's learning that hinge movement. And so I think a lot of people are unaware of just progressions in general.
100%. So let me talk. I'm just going to quickly, this is way more sciencey than we normally get into, but just quickly talk about the 5 primal movements within strength training, just really quickly. Oftentimes sometimes people will say there's 6 or 7. But in my brain, I want to simplify as much as possible. It doesn't matter really, but there's 5 primal movements: push, pull, hinge, squat, and torsion control, or core. Sometimes people will put core and twist as 2 separate, but to me, they're the same function. It's torsion control. So it's not just stabilizing the core or twisting the core. To me, those aren't 2 separate things. They're one thing of torsion control. And then sometimes people will include lunge as one of the primal movements. But in my mind, and the way I see it, for simplicity's sake, is that a lunge is just the unilateral version of a squat. It's the same mechanics. So to me, they're under 5. So for those 5 primal movements in strength training, almost every exercise that you do can be tied back to those 5 primal movements. And there are progressions for those movements. So like Danielle said, I would never load up a barbell with any amount of weight, or even hand a beginner exerciser a barbell and say deadlift this bar, because that's more likely than not going to end up in injury. And it's the same even with a squat, right? I see so many beginners like just go straight to a back-loaded barbell squat. Yeah. And I'm like
I know. But that's what I mean. It's like, But like, I just honestly find that there's not enough shit on the internet about progressions that's like readily available or interesting to people who aren't a coach. And I think if you don't have a coach, you can run into just kind of seeing something, it looks badass and you want to do it,
try
right?
it.
And you don't understand that it takes literally like, it could take a year,
Years.
right? To get
you
to a
gotta
certain
prep your
level
body for it,
for
right?
doing
You
it
gotta prep
properly.
your body for these movements. I think that's essentially what we're getting at is like, when you say there's not enough about progressions, you're absolutely right. It's because people want the quickest, fastest
Yeah.
results. And so
And they
they
want to
look at
squat this
someone,
much and
right? I want to go ahead and just like backloaded barbell squat as heavy as possible without actually kind of making sure that all of your joints, your spine, your muscles, your ligament, all that stuff that supports your body, making sure that's prepared to do that. Because I love squatting. Don't get me, actually, that's so false. I don't love squatting. I didn't love squatting since working for the past 6 months. Specifically on my squat, I actually enjoy squatting now. But you know, I think it's there. You're right. There's not enough kind of support or information out there.
But just how important it is
for just to prep
and
your
that it's
body.
Okay. To start and like to take, you know, like and to like, we're going to get into how that affects with online coaching. But like you said, pandemic, home workouts, sometimes people, they just go buy a fucking squat rack and they're like, hey,
I'm
a beginner.
now.
I've never worked out. I have a squat rack. What can you do for me?
Like, jealous.
Like,
I just got my first squat rack ever, and I've been working out.
I know a lot of people are getting
and
squat racks.
What? What did you say?
And I mean, like, squat racks are bomb, but I'm like, can you just? I just said like a lot of people are getting squat racks, and I'm like, can you just go pick up a set of 10s, please?
Yeah,
and like maybe a resistance
grab
band.
a kettle, like grab one kettlebell or one 20-pound dumbbell. Like, let's start there.
We're just gonna start there.
Yeah. I think you're so right. So I think there's like this. What's the quote? Like, start where you are with what you have, or something to that effect.
Ooh,
like start where you are. Like, I think that's so important with strength training, right? Like, and knowing if something feels really like, if something feels off or it's scary, there's a reason it feels off and scary. It's because you're not mentally prepared or physically prepared to do that thing. So, I mean, at a certain point, you do have to push yourself outside your comfort zone, but you
should not feel pain in the not good burn.
Actually, that's a good point. Let's just quickly touch on good pain versus bad pain, right?
Yeah.
I think for beginner exercisers too, especially as they get really scared when they start to feel like the muscle burn, and knowing the difference between that good pain where the muscles are burning versus like, oh shit, I just like slipped a disc. No, but right.
Yeah.
Because when I started, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have known. I really wouldn't have it's weird when you start to feel like your muscles burn and like the breaking, like
and they are different
of muscle
depending
fibers.
on which muscles they are. Like, I find the burn for the shoulders is like, I love that burn. But then like a burn for like,
for you.
I know I love friggin' burn shoulders, but burn for like legs or whatever, I don't love it.
Yeah, it's totally different.
It's a different
and it's individual.
feel.
So let's talk. Okay, so let's just get right into the next part then about how, I guess, injuries happen. So, and this is a pretty easy transition here, because that's exactly what happens when you skip all of the, the base training and preparation for your body, and skip right into, trying to lift, sling around 50-pound kettlebells, right? Like, you are more likely than not going to injure yourself. And when injuries happen, it totally throws you off your game, especially if you're new. Like, if you're new to exercising and you get injured, that can totally derail you. I know for me, like, working through injuries is so mentally tough. And when
Oh
I
my
say working
gosh.
through injuries, I don't mean like continue to train through injuries, because I really truly believe you should not train through injuries. Like I
Yeah,
hear
you should
this.
listen to your body.
Yeah, I see
There's a
so many.
difference between rehabbing them, like, and that's a really good point for what even you just said about, you know, when you are injured or whatever, it's like you can't rush back to that being okay. So for example, if somebody fucks up their shoulder and then they're just frustrated mentally that they can't get back to where they were with their shoulder, they're skipping those steps of rehab on that
Yeah.
shoulder, which like it's going to be
So,
boring,
and
but
talking about rehab though, like let's just quickly, as trainers, as coaches, I mean, we have our certifications, but we are not certified to
no,
rehab an
got to
injury.
go somewhere for that.
So when I no, so when we have clients who get injured, I mean it's inevitable to get injuries at some point, right? It's
Oh yeah.
not for everyone, but I mean if you're training, like Danielle said, she got injured, right? It's kind of inevitable for things to happen along the way, or even like breaking an arm, whatever it is. You have to go see a
Yeah.
professional. Again,
Have
it's
to.
going back to the hormone thing, right? Like we're not like, if you're working with like an online coach and
And
they
they're giving you
tell
stretches
they're
to heal your injury.
unless they're a physiotherapist, a
Yeah.
chiropractor, or a medical doctor, a physician, they're not qualified to do that. So if you get injured, absolutely go see a physio. Like go
Yeah.
see if I personally always recommend a physiotherapist. Actually, I just learned today
Yeah.
that
I
in
always say
America
physio too.
they're called something else. Physical therapists in the
Ooh,
US. Yeah.
that makes sense.
So a physical therapist is what we call a physio. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so always, if you are injured,
Yeah.
or if you're like having consistent like low back pain, or you're, like when you squat you have like excruciating hip pain or something, I mean, I can tell you probably, like if it's a common injury like sciatica, right, something like this, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's probably sciatica. But I would never treat that. Like I would never
No.
try to help that person. I'd say, hey, it sounds like it might be something like this, but go see a professional, get it diagnosed, and work with them on rehabbing.
And let me know
Meantime,
what they say.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the meantime, let me know what they can say, let me know what they say, and let me know what we can work on together.
Yeah.
So important to go seek proper advice and medical treatment for actual injuries.
And with that being said, too, is you run into the people, who have injuries or old injuries, and then they just want you to kind of work around this
Around the
injury,
injury.
and then you find out the injury was like 10 years ago, and they have never even seeked physio. And
Yes.
I'm just kind of like,
Sought.
you need to seek physio and
So
take care of that.
yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And I see the same thing as an online coach in particular. I mean, everything's online now, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the
Oh
last
my God,
year.
yeah.
More and more people are doing online programming and all this stuff. And if you go to an online coach and, you want to work out, but you have chronic knee pain, I say, how many times have you gotten inquiries saying like, hey, I can't squat, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
I'm
it's
like, well, what are we gonna do? Like my chest. And then they're like, and I don't have any supply. And I'm like, well, body weight stuff is like push-ups or legs, like
yeah,
for the most
yeah.
part. So it's
It's
hard.
really, really difficult for an online coach to program for someone with injuries that haven't been addressed. If
Yeah.
someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm working with my RMT, my knees are horrible, but I'm working with a chiro and so I've been working on this. I'm doing these exercises, all this stuff. No problem. I will absolutely work with that person because I can see that they are putting, like, they recognize that this is,
It's
something that needs to
important.
be fixed.
Yeah.
It's the people who it's when, you just say,
Just
oh,
live
like,
with it.
I have knee pain. Like, this is just my life. I live with knee pain. And I
And
can't
then
do
they
squats
don't know
because
why, and they're like
I'm
20.
not
I'm
going to do
just like,
squats. Yeah, I'm like, so
I'm
no.
like, oh, you need to we need to squat in life,
Well,
like
if you can't squat, how do you sit on the toilet to poop? So
I love
what?
that.
That's always my
That's a
question.
fair
I always ask them back. Like I just imagine it's like I just
squat to
imagine it's
box.
kind of like a straight-legged, like,
That was me with sciatica when I was pregnant. That right there, what I just saw, trying to get onto the toilet to pee.
right?
And
So,
my legs had to stay straight, and so did everything.
so it's like, P.S. Do you like my grout fit?
I love it. I'm wearing like the same type of thing.
But that's kind of where, for me personally, that's where I'm at with
Yeah.
like people like, and it's common. Knee pain is so common, right? Like
Oh
knee pain,
God.
especially as you age, like the knees take a beating, man. So knee pain is one of those things that's very common. But as with any injury, like I think both you and I agree on this, like you don't just deal with it. Like you don't just
No,
you
you
don't
gotta
just live
figure
with
it out.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
go figure it out and try to
What can you
address it.
do? Like that's where you kind of have to if you have these things and you haven't truly like got any help with them, you need to kind of like, are you going to live that way for the rest of your life? Or are you going to try to find some answers? It all goes back to your health and your overall health, and like you're signing up to be healthy, but you can't just put a band-aid on the knees that won't lunge if you don't know why.
Yeah,
And you're young.
that's more like, that's a great point, right? It's more often than not people have no idea why. They're like, oh, I just
Yeah,
have bad
I would
knees.
want to know. I'd be like, no, this isn't right.
Oh, like my mom is a prime example, and she doesn't, God bless her.
I saw her
I think
at the gym the other day. We were talking about her knees, her arthritis.
mom has
And
so
Natasha
much
was telling
arthritis.
her not to do stuff, and she was doing it anyway.
Oh yeah, so my mom is not a good example. Isn't she the worst? She's so like, she's just so stubborn. But
She's like,
my
no,
mom
no,
is a
no. I know
perfect
my
example.
limits.
Yeah, my mom's a perfect example. She she's lived with knee pain for probably like 5 years and has actively been working with two chiros,
Yeah,
a reflexologist, and a
love that.
physio to address these knee issues. And yeah, it's frustrating, and yeah, it's probably never going to go away for her, but she's doing
It's
all the things,
manageable.
and it's
Yeah,
not stopping her from going to your sister-in-law's class
right. Just
and
banging it out. I look over like she's going.
she,
I'm
she
like, go,
tries so
Carm.
hard. Yeah, I guess. And yeah, anyway, so that's kind of, I think that's it's important to kind of figure out what's wrong.
Yeah,
If something's holding you back from resistance training, or from any sort of activity, I really, really, really strongly believe that you should try to figure it out. And that, I mean, that's just that goes for anything, any sort of
yeah,
mental health, emotional health, physical health. If something is wrong, go figure it out. Don't just like try to live through it. There's lots of resources out there, and if you're unsure where to start, I mean, I start with Google.
Google's the
Like,
best sometimes.
what do I do? I literally just type in the search bar, like, what to do with like,
Yeah,
what do I do what if, like, that's like always, right? So start there. But there's lots of resources out there, and definitely don't just live with pain. That's not
yeah.
necessary. And don't let injuries or chronic injuries stop you from
Yeah. You're just
improving
going to
your
have to
life.
seek a different route. Like when it comes to people who do have like a ton of injuries, and like I'm sure you've ran into it before, I've ran into it. Like there's people who you're going to have to turn down because they just have too many injuries for online coaching. I'm not there watching your form. I can't make sure you're doing things properly.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's people that maybe they didn't disclose all of their injuries, in the beginning. And then as you're putting all these
Programs
programs
together.
into
It sounds like
place,
you it sounds
which
like you have
takes
some
hours.
personal experience with this.
It's funny. I think people think that you can just like whip up programs, and like, yeah,
Oh,
there's
like it takes
templates,
hours.
but it takes hours
Yeah, like I
to
spend
make
hours
a
on my
program.
programs. Hours. Seriously.
Yeah.
So I think it's in when someone has an
Especially
injury.
injuries, right?
Yeah.
It's extra, extra.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And as like, I think just to with the online training thing, you know, if you are a very, very beginner, and this is just a little piece of advice, like not for, doesn't matter with us. If you're doing any sort of online program and you have never lifted a weight before, you absolutely need to have form feedback. Okay. Like you absolutely need to have
send videos.
Yeah. So you have to be having, like, you have to have a coach giving you feedback on this stuff. That's why in-person training is always better for beginners, so that you have a coach watching you perform these movements. But if you're not, we understand right now it's a pin, like you might not be able to get into a gym and hire a trainer. So if you're working online with someone, you know, even if you've been doing it for a couple months, if they've never reviewed your form, definitely ask them to look at some of your form and some of your,
and it's really great
exercises.
too for people who are saying that their workouts aren't hard, right? And you're just like, well, the workout is friggin' hard. Like I just did it myself today and I was dead.
That's always,
But it's it goes back to a form. It's your form.
You can give your form and your tempo and
just
the weight
everything.
you're lifting. There's so many factors. If you find a workout too easy, I can give a beginner workout to a pro athlete, and I have seen a pro athlete like die off that program, and a beginner will be like, no, it's not hard enough. And that's because they don't know how to make all, if you don't know how to make all those like tweaks to weight, reps, set, tempo, all this stuff, it's inevitably going to feel easy. So anyway, if you're working online with someone, definitely make sure you're doing everything you can to support your long-term health. And I think that's pretty much it, right?
That's pretty much it.
Love it. This was quick. This was good. This was like was it? I don't even know. I can't tell anymore, but
I think it was good. Like my neck ached the whole time. I don't know what I'm going to do about that for me.
I do not love that for you. That
like I just horrible. I don't typically get injured. Like I just don't.
So are you going to go seek professional help if it persists?
I'm going to get a massage first.
Oh, nice. That's nice. That's good.
Definitely. I'm giving it like a couple days.
Yeah, Keith just hurt his back too, and he went for dry needling and a massage, and it's still kind of not great, so he's probably gonna have to keep going. So, but yeah, no.
Yeah. I think I just had my neck like clenched when I was doing it on my left side because it's my weaker side, and I think it just kind of, it's not crazy, it's just sore. Yeah. It was not that in moment one, so like you said, just maybe a little bit of.
It wasn't an acute injury where you were like, whoop. Oh, like I just popped a disc, or like slipped a disc or something like that, which I've definitely done. Oh my God, in a squat, I like have felt not a disc, not a slip disc. I'm being dramatic, but like I felt a pop in my
oh my gosh
joint.
That's my worst fear.
Oh yeah, I was like that, and I was at the bottom of a squat, and I like just dropped to the floor. Yeah. I just and luckily I had the arms there.
I was gonna say, did you have something there?
I had the arms there to catch the bar because I literally just dropped straight to the floor. That is a lot easier to deal with actually, because when you go to have it treated, you're like, I know exactly what happened, when it happened, what I was doing, where I felt it, and they can easily help you, create a recovery plan. When it's not an acute injury and you're like, I have no
it's hard
idea.
To figure out.
It's a little bit hard to figure out, but you can still do it by seeking help. So yeah, I think that's it for training and injury. But what are we talking about next time, Danielle?
We've decided that we're going to keep next week's a surprise.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Surprise! Tune in next week for maybe we'll announce it like the day before.
Oh, the day before. Okay. I like that.
Like, or on the weekend, we'll announce what it's going to be.
Okay. I'm excited. This will be good. All right. Sweet.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and shout out Opulence Media Group. As always, getting us set up, and we'll tune in next week. Bye. Bye. Oh, mine was manly. Bye.